Hello, everyone. You're in the right place. This is the Signals Notebook Quarterly Connect Community Series, and I'm Rochelle Beanstalk. I'm the Product Marketing Manager for Revity Signals. And this is our new website, revity.com, with this bright yellow color. So if you come here to find out information about the Signals Notebook, if you go down here to the portfolio, you'll come to the Signal software section of the Revity notebook, and you can select portfolio and scroll down to select the Signal software. And then if you go to the bottom of the page, you'll scroll down to see the link for software information. And you can click on, you'll see the listed there are all the familiar Signals products, Signals Notebook, Signals Research Suite, Signals Vitro Vivo, and you can click on the Revity Signals homepage to go to the Revity Signals homepage there with the sort of reddish orange color to get information about our software products. So why Revity? So Revity was born from two words, rev for revolutionize and vita, meaning life in Latin. So Revity delivers end-to-end expertise and solutions from research discovery to development and diagnosis to cure. So hence the name Revity Signals, and that's where it comes from. And now today, to bring you to today's Signals Notebook Quarterly Connect. So this is an ongoing community series, and it's an opportunity for you to learn about newly added Signals Notebook functionality and to hear how others are using Signals Notebook to improve productivity and data transparency through collaboration. This particular Signals Quarterly Connect has a topical focus on the implementation and use of Signals Notebook in a GxP-regulated environment. So our previous sessions have been recorded and are available for streaming on our website. And future dates for the Signals Quarterly Connect have been shared with this registration, and I hope you'll join us for the future programs, which are scheduled for August and November. So we want to continue this series to be as interactive as possible. So please submit future topic ideas in the chat box or reach out to us in between sessions with your input. A couple of quick housekeeping reminders before the start. We'll have ample time at the end of the presentations for questions and open office hours. So please submit your questions through the question box that's located on the right-hand side of your screen. Lastly, this webinar is being recorded, and the recording will be shared with all the attendees in the upcoming days. So now let's go to our agenda for today. So today's agenda, as I've said, is implementation and use of the Signals Notebook in the regulated environment. And we're going to discuss validation principles, the release schedule to support validation, and the roadmap for functional enhancements for GxP Work. Now let me introduce we have two presenters today. Philip Skinner, the Signals Notebook Product Marketing Manager, and Chris Rundell, the Field Application Scientist, who will demonstrate some of the GxP validation. So our first presenter of the day is Dr. Philip Skinner, the Signals Notebook Product Manager. Philip Skinner is an evangelist for the Signals Notebook, specifically in both the life sciences and chemistry communities, and he's delighted to bring his experience and passion of providing consulting to customers who are using or considering using the Signals Notebook. Prior to joining Revity Signals, Philip spent a decade working as a medicinal chemist, progressing GPCR ligands into clinical development for metabolic diseases. Philip holds a PhD in chemistry from the University of Durham and completed postdoctoral studies at the ETH in Zurich. So Philip, I'll hand over the presentation to you.
Thank you so much, Rochelle. Let me just change the screen here. go. Okay, so thank you, Rochelle. I'm delighted to be able to introduce this topic to you today. We're going to be talking about how we provide solutions to our customers and to our scientists in those customers, specifically Signals Notebook, for use in regulated environments. So before I really get going on this, I'm going to introduce the topic and talk about it. A few aspects of this, and then pass over to my colleague Chris Rundell, who's actually going to show you what we do live. And but before I get into the details, I want to define a couple of these terms. Okay, so specifically what we mean by regulated environment, and then also what we mean by Signals Notebook. So for any of you who aren't aware of what Signals Notebook is, Signals Notebook was the first and still is the only true cloud electronic lab notebook, delivered software as a service. So you'll see this term SaaS, with embedded ChemDraw within. And then when we talk about our regulated environment, historically, we've done a lot of work with sort of early pharmaceutical and industrial chemistry research, so large molecule, small molecule formulations research. What we're talking about here are scientists working predominantly under GLP, a little bit of GMP, in that kind of development, midstream development space. So large molecule development, small molecule development, formulations development. Other groups like in vitro, in vivo, DMPK, process chemistry, fermentation, and so on. So anyone kind of working under the guidelines of 21 CFR 11, anyone working under the GxP guidelines from OECD, and other regulations such as that. So, as I mentioned, we're very experienced in that sort of earlier research part of pharmaceutical development, and Signals Notebook is well known for operating in that space. 6 of the 10 largest pharmaceutical companies have implemented Signals Notebook for their research organizations. Signals Notebook is incredibly easy to use. It's intuitive, but it's functionally rich. It has familiar tools to our scientists to use, such as ChemDraw, Office 365, Snapgene, and so on. Administratively, it's really easy to deliver. It's zero footprint. It's operating system agnostic, and we're providing updates very frequently and silently to the end user community. And from its architecture, it's incredibly reliable. Because it's software as a service, it's very consistent in the way that it's delivered. It's delivered to thousands and thousands of users and scaled appropriately for that. So the impact of adding more users as an organization, adding more content as an organization, is handled by the scalability of the infrastructure. And as I mentioned, 6 of 10 leading pharmaceutical companies are using Signals Notebook amongst many, many more other organizations. So it's well established and well known in that scientific research space. It's less well known in that regulated space, but it's still actually great there. So Signals Notebook can be applied in a way that's very controlled. So administratively, you can lock down a lot of the workflows that guide your scientists to operating in the way that you need them to operate in a regulated arena. It provides really robust but also agile access controls that you can control who sees what, who does what, and you can change that very rapidly. And it provides a really thorough audit trail that you can interact and really dive into the changes that have occurred within the content. Because Signals Notebook is used consistently, it's a software as a service, everyone's getting exactly the same software, albeit changing through configuration. Thousands and thousands of users using it, it's highly trusted. We'll get into the details of this, but within a regulated environment, typically we bake in a delay. So those thousands and thousands of users are effectively doing user acceptance testing for you on every feature upstream, which gives you great reliability. And Signals Notebook can be validation ready. Again, with that delay, we give you somewhere between 2 to 6 months preview time of upcoming features in order to ready the validation activities that you need to conduct. And we deliver Signals Notebook with all the documentation that you need to execute that. So although Signals Notebook is well established and well known as being great in scientific research, it really is also great in those regulated environments where those requirements are more robust. So the FDA define what software validation is, and part of the story here is it's not just about the validation itself, but the validation is really a way that you can test to show that the software is reliably working as it's designed. But it also, part of validation is verifying that the features that are delivered through the software actually solve business problems that your users have. So it's part process in doing the testing and part that the functionality actually needs to do what you need it to do your job. So what we're going to talk about is, I'm going to talk about this from two viewpoints, essentially the non-functional and the functional capability viewpoints. So I'm going to describe what we do at Revity Signal Software, what our policies, processes, and procedures are that we follow that allow you to have the confidence that the functional requirements we're delivering to you are consistently fulfilled. And then we're going to talk about some of the functional capabilities that we have that allow you to be confident that your scientists are following your policies, your processes and procedures consistently. So the first is process on our side, and the second is function that we deliver that allows you to follow your processes. It's the combination of these two that really allow you to operate well in a validated environment. So to start off talking about the processes we have, our non-functional capabilities, the delivery of Signals Notebook into a validated environment really rests on what we do for our non-validated customers. So, and we need to contrast that, but we also get to leverage that. So our non-validated customers, as I mentioned, get very frequent releases of new capabilities in Signals Notebook. They get immediate access to that new functionality as soon as it's released. And we're going to contrast that to the way that our validated customers operate. They don't get frequent releases. You don't get immediate access. But you use this frequent release and immediate access in order to prepare your validation activities. So when you're working in a validated environment, you get 3 releases a year, very predictable timelines. They're beginning of March, beginning of July, and beginning of November. And for any feature coming down to you, you get somewhere between 2 and 6 months of preview time of those features on our frequent release schedule in a sandbox. So you can preview those capabilities, decide how to configure them, decide if you're going to roll them out, prepare the validation activities that you need to conduct. During that time, during that 2 to 6 months, we have hundreds of organizations, thousands and thousands of users using those capabilities, giving you really effectively really robust user acceptance testing on it. So you're leveraging the work of these users working in production to really sort of hammer on the capabilities and test them, so that by the time it comes to you, the quality is incredibly high. So our non-validated release schedule, an example release schedule is depicted here by these blue arrows on a calendar line. You can see that there's a lot of them. In this case, there's 10. You can see that they're non-regular. So we do release when we are ready to release. We don't have a set schedule. Tends to be every 4 to 6 weeks. We tend to do 10 a year, but there's no specific expectations around that. So this is what we're doing for our production level users that are working in non-validated environments. This is what you would access through a sandbox. We need to contrast that to what you would actually be using in production. This is really the key of how you maintain a SaaS application and keep it validated. So for your validated implementation, what we do is we essentially take all of the updates that occur in a 4-month block, so from the 1st of January to the end of April, plus any minor patches that come out after that. And we take that as a whole, one update that is then applied to a staging environment for you, and then a month later to a production environment for you. So for everything that we release in our non-validated world, from the 1st of January to the end of April, you'll get in a staging environment at the beginning of June, you'll get in production beginning of July. From the 1st of May to the end of August, you'll get that beginning of October, beginning of November. And then from the 1st of September to the end of December, you'll get that the following February and then in March. So you get 1 month to do your Delta validation, but you've had somewhere between 2 to 6 months of preparation time and preview time on those features to decide which of those you want to implement for your end users, what testing you may need to do during that Delta validation time. So what do we give you? What do we at Signals, Revity Signals Software give you as a customer working in our validated environment? So first, for that release that's going to your staging and then to your production, we do full verification on that release in our more rapid release cadence. We give you a sandbox tenant to have that 2 to 6 months preview. So you do all your validation preparation in there. We give you 1 or more staging tenants on that staging environment. That's 1 month ahead of your production, and that's where you do all of your validation activities, your Delta validation activities. And we give you 1 or more production tenant for where your end user is going to be working and actually putting in their data once you've done your validation. We give you a documentation package initially, and then on every update. This includes release notes, IQ, OQ documentation, validation summary reports and certificates. Obviously an initial that is where you start, and then Delta documentation every 4 months. We then also, there are parts of the PQ that you need to do, but we provide you some documentation that augments that that PQ documentation. There's certain parts that rely on activities that we've taken, so we give you those documents. And should you need it, we do provide professional services that can augment your PQ activities. So that's what we give you. That's the processes and policies and procedures that we follow in order to deliver you a validation ready application. So now we're going to talk a little bit about what we provide by way of functional capabilities that really aid your scientists working in your regulated and validated environments to follow your processes, policies, and procedures. Help them do their job properly, following your controls without getting in the way too much. So we really think about a hierarchy of needs. We talked about how Signals Notebook is a very flexible or very powerful notebook for use in earlier stage research, where the goal really is for Signals Notebook to allow scientists to do whatever they want to do and get out of the way. So we still rely on a lot of that. It's actually easier to add controls onto something that's flexible than to open up flexibility on something that's very locked down. So our scientists can readily add very free-form content. We talked about using intuitive tools, familiar tools like Microsoft Office and ChemDraw and SnapGene. So our scientists can add content very free-form in adding the files that they may be attaching into a paper notebook, the ability to type text, add pictures, draw chemical compounds, and organize those into familiar object models such as notebooks and experiments and studies and projects and so on. We provide a very highly powered search engine that allows you to go and find the content that you want. This is very similar technologies that are used by, say, Google or modern flight searching applications or other cloud applications, Facebook and so on. And then we provide a number of integration tools so you can really embed Signals Notebook into your systems, have it connect to your databases, access and either send data to or retrieve data from the applications that you have in-house. So we build off of those kind of foundational capabilities that are useful to our research scientists. Even our research scientists need some level of oversight and control. So I mentioned we provide really robust and agile access controls and sharing. So this allows you as an organization to define who can see what, who can do what, but very rapidly change that should you have changes in business rules. We provide very deep, robust audit trails that allow you to drill into different content and see the changes that have occurred over time. We allow you to put structure around your experimental content, be that properties at the kind of parent level, at the experiments, but also kind of defining more tabular content such as tables. And we provide reviews and signing workflows that can be configured. Specifically for our users working in regulated environments, we start to add even more controlled workflows. So we provide capabilities such as capturing reasons for change of certain properties. We provide the ability to archive the content. We provide the ability to add on multiple review steps. The ability to put more control on the data entry and conditions around it, be that sort of number ranges or date, relative date ranges or so on. And we're going to be highlighting today a capability that we've called worksheets, which is really providing a very systematic form-based mode for data entry. And this contrasts very much with sort of the free form that our research scientists use. I want to describe worksheets a little bit more, and then Chris is actually going to be showing you a lot of this. Worksheets is one of these terms that means a lot of different things to different people. So I think it's useful to explain what we think about when we talk about worksheets. So our customers use, in the paper world, they'll use things called worksheets, which are typically PDF. They can be Word, they can be Excel, they can be paper. I think they ultimately come from paper forms, right? If you break down what a worksheet is, it tends to be a document that is a controlled set of steps and checks that people have to make. It is defined areas for data entry, a box that you're going to put a number, right? You're going to record a temperature, you're going to record a mass, you're going to record an ID or something. So boxes with set expectations of the type of data that's going in a very sequential manner, start at the top and move down. And then interspersed with instructional text that the end user can't change. So please go to your balance and record the mass on your balance and enter it here. So you shouldn't be changing the instructional text, you just enter the data in the box that you're expected to. As I said, these are often done in PDF. People are actually using our text element in Signals Notebook to do these a lot. And what we've delivered, and Chris will be showing you, is a very flexible form builder where you administratively can design the form that you want and then layer on the fields that you need the end user to enter, interspersed with the instructional text that they can't change. So Chris will be showing you a lot more of that, but that's one of the highlights of feature sets that we've been delivering recently to help your scientists work better, following your policies and procedures. I did want to take one moment to look forward. We're in software development, we're never done. We're always innovating, we're always building. So although I think we have a very robust and exciting offering for our scientists in the validated and regulated world, we are still looking to the future and thinking about what else we want to do. So we do have a focus on continuing on this idea of form-based data entry, so embedding tables in our worksheets and doing more robust calculations there. We do have a focus on enhancing our capabilities around versioning, and we have a short-term focus on improving the world for our administrators, especially our sort of power users, lower level admins, and giving them the capabilities they really need to succeed. With that, I am done, and I'm going to pass over to my colleague Chris. Actually, Rochelle, do you want to introduce Chris here?
Yes, let me introduce Chris. I was on mute here. Okay. So let's make sure this is out of the way here. Whoop. So our next speaker is Chris Rendell, who's the field application scientist, and he's going to demonstrate the GxP validation elements within the Signals notebook for you. He's worked with Signals Notebook, Spotfire, and Chemtrail, and prior to joining Revity, he was a medicinal chemist in industry for a number of years, working mainly in the areas of pain and epilepsy. He holds a PhD in organic synthesis from University College London, where he worked on synthetic methodology and the total synthesis of natural products. Thanks so much for joining us today, Chris.
Hi there.
Okay, so let me hand it over to you.
Hi there. So I'm Chris, and I'll be showing you the kind of the day-to-day workings of Signals Notebook, especially within a regulated environment. Before that, I'll just show you like products in general. So we offer products to and solutions for every part of the make, test, decide cycle, whether you're in functional materials like OLEDs or the classic things of like small molecule drug discovery. And Signals Notebook is there and tightly embedded with ChemDraw for data capture and collaboration, so satisfying that make part of the cycle. If you ever need a process for data processing, then Signals Vitra Vivo is definitely a thing to look for. And then if you want to make data-driven scientific decisions, Signals Inventor will help you do that. And both Signals Inventor and Signals Vitra Vivo are based on top of Spotfire, so they're powered by Spotfire. On top of this, we have just become a fully SaaS-based offering. So if you ever needed all of these pieces of software within your organization, we have the Signals Research Suite. So now you can not worry about, for example, installation and like hosting things such as Spotfire. You can just get a license and straight away we can spin up a new instance of Signals Research Suite, and you can get the notebook and all those Spotfire based offerings straight off the bat. But today we're here to talk about Signals Notebook. So you've heard from Philip already some of the points of why Signals Notebook is a really good offering on the market. I actually used Signals Notebook as a medicinal chemist on a day-to-day basis for a number of years, and you could easily say I was a satisfied customer. You'll see that there's like 0 install, so if you're having to upkeep it, all you have to do is buy the licenses, and straight away you can just log in and you'll get your product. But the scalability is great too, so no matter how many licenses you need, the performance never really changes. And due to its like microservice background, the resilience is really, really high. So for example, Netflix turned to microservices to increase the resilience and decrease the downtime of their product, Netflix. You'll see that there are rapid updates, but as Philip has already told you, within a validated environment, we do change the cadence to satisfy the regulatory needs of our customers. And as said before, the systems are validation ready, so you don't have to worry about any of kind of the tech deployment and any of the compliance with things like, such as ISO guidelines. From a user experience point of view, it's really, really easy to use, and this would kind of be labored when I'm doing the demo, that it's really easy to use, and it has a Google-like search, but also kind of like a social media type feel that anybody could really use it without having to do any kind of training. And we have the ability to drag and drop different building blocks into our experiments and then integrate with useful things such as Microsoft Office. Also, especially if you're in a lab and you're wanting to not use a computer, it is cross-platform, so all you realistically need is a browser such as Google Chrome, and you can get using it. This means that if you wanted to use a tablet in the lab when you're doing a procedure, you could easily integrate this into your workflow. From a collaboration point of view, access control can be as broad as you want or as enclosed as you want, depending on your security policies as a company. And you'll see some of these things later that, for example, we have a review workflow, which is designed to be either as unrestricted as possible or restricted to help you comply with guidelines. Lastly, but not least, as I said earlier, we are the only offering that has integrated with ChemDraw, and we also offer a robust API. So I will hint at this later at the use of APIs within the workflow. So on a day-to-day basis, you could use Signals Notebook, and you would see an experiment like the one on the right here, where you could have an embedded ChemDraw object, just like you'd expect, and then this will sync very well with a stoichiometry grid on the same page if you need it. You could then also have a text kind of write-up for unstructured data, like so, and as Philip said, that people had used this kind of text area to describe and show their procedures. You could also integrate different tables. They can also involve some kind of like rudimentary calculations in it. And also we have things such as an inventory system, which is truly integrated into the notebook. So you can also connect what you're using in a reaction or in a formulation to the properties of the chemical very easily. Lastly, we will actually see a bit of a task and request system going on here, so you can collaborate and send your workflows to other people within the department. And then lastly, and the more important thing, as you've heard, is the use of worksheets. So the first thing that we will go over is worksheets and also the prevention of deletion of elements. So this will, depending how the admin has defined it, either stop you from doing certain things such as deleting certain elements, and in the case of worksheets, only allow you to input information in certain elements. And then we have a two-stage review process and archive stage. So I will highlight that once you're done with an experiment, you can easily send it to this kind of workflow, and then we can easily comply with GxP requirements. Worksheets, as been described, are a mixture of input fields and static text, as you can see here on the right. But the admin gets to the ability to, for example, lock fields, and if you want to change said fields after inputting information, then you have to give a reason for change, and that's really useful, especially with audit trails. You can also have things such as the prevention of signing if incomplete. So this could just be out of manual error, or if you just want to help enforce guidelines, this can be a really, really useful thing, especially on a day-to-day basis. We also include new features such as timestamp elements and ranges of values. So this really helps you enforce compliance. And you can see here just a little video of me just playing around with it, whereby I just click on the timestamp and straight away you can see that a date and time has been put on. So that's enough about features. Let's get into a demo. So I'm just going to make sure I'm logged in. Excellent. So this is the kind of page that you will see as a user of Signals Notebook. And this is kind of like a dashboard showing you what to do. But in general, we want to start a new experiment. So I'm just going to go into the Add New here and click on Experiment. You can see that we have the ability to have templates. And in this case, the admin has already defined a template for me as a user to do my workflow. So I'm going to use this template and then attach it to one of my notebooks. But realistically, you don't need a workbook if you don't want to. There's no change in the performance or how you can search through the data if you have one or not. You can see straight away, though, that a lot of information has already been given to you as a user from this template, which has already been defined by the admin. So we have a purpose of this experiment. So this is a validated process for making some aceclofenac and paracetamol tablets. So aceclofenac is a anti-inflammatory agent and paracetamol is a anti-pain agent, and this is just a formulation of the two, and you can see that we have a structural representation of the two within this embedded ChemDraw element. If we wanted to, we can also have a stoichiometry grid, but as this isn't a reaction, there's no need to show it. You can see also the admin has been very helpful for us and given us kind of a list of ingredients as such for what we need to use for this formulation, and the units of each one, and perhaps their specifications, so if they were going to comply with our process. And then lastly, you can see a list of acceptable equipment that could be enforced within the lab. So in this case, the admin, perhaps a lab manager, has said that these 2 vibro sifters, which will be used in my process, are the ones that have to be used. So I should keep that in mind. Next, we just have a free text element where I can write notes. So in this case, I could say, for example, that this is a test run, like so, and you can see that straight away it's saving it. In our case, though, I don't really have many notes, so I can just delete this element. You can see that it's really easy to then just trash that part of the element. But, for example, if I wanted to, I can't delete this table. So this has been enforced by the admin that I can't delete anything which they have marked as not to be deleted. So this really helps control the workflows of the scientist, and also just prevent mistakes. On another page, before we get into the process, you can see that actually we have an embedded PDF object here. So this is the paper for the process of making these tablets, which is used in the worksheets. So if there was any ambiguity, actually the admin has had that in mind and kind of given you a kind of manual on how to do things outside of the worksheet. But I'll go on to our process for today. So let's say you start a shift and you have your instructions here. You'll see that there are many different input boxes and then also some instructions, so we can follow it logically down the page as you would with a PDF element, for example. So I'm just going to put a date and a time here, and you can see that straight away it's given the time here in the UK, and then I can just input a room number like so. And you can see that they are locking them each time because the admin has defined that he wants to not have these things to be changed without a reason. You then go through the process in general, whereby we have to charge a stainless steel reactor with some ingredients and then heat to boiling. And then filter and stop heating. Next, we have a step which we have to add some extra ingredients such as maize starch, and then continue stirring to a specific temperature. So if I hover over this element, for example, we see a tooltip giving us information as a user of what we need to do next. So it has specified that we need a temperature range of 85 to 90 degrees. So let's just type in 85. As you can see though, I actually made a typo and it's 95 degrees and it's highlighted as in red, telling me that something's gone wrong. So I need to change this, right? You can click on the unlock field and then change this element like so. And you can see now it's blue down here, but we have to give a reason for change. These reasons can be defined by the administrator. In this case, I'm just going to do miscellaneous and enter a comment and then say this was a typo, meant 85 degrees, not 95, and then press change. You can see that actually this has already been changed and saved. And if we go into the audit history, like so, you can see that it has captured the change in the element from 95 degrees to 85 degrees and also given you the reason for the change. So this will be useful, for example, if somebody is auditing my experiment later in the year. For now, I'll just close the history panel. We can go through the flow just like how we would usually. So I record a weight of the paste as they ask, and I'm going to say 5 kilos, and then the temperature. It wants it to be 40 degrees here, so I will do it to 40 degrees and just tick step completed. We can then go to the next part of the workflow, which is defined for my shift. So we need to do a date and time and which vibro sift is used. If you recall earlier, we had a list of which materials, so which sifters I could use. So let's go and search which one I used. In this case, our search query already comes up with the ones that are allowable, and I'm just going to pick the first one. We can then go through the process like so, how we've done before. So I'm going to use 1 kilo of paracetamol and 5 of microcrystalline cellulose. And then also you can see here that I can add a reference to a batch. So this is because actually our company makes the paracetamol itself and then formulates it. So there's a fully traceable link now between the experiment of who made the paracetamol and where it's been made in the formulation. And if we hover over it, you can see more information to do with that experiment. And then we can keep on following the process just how we would with the worksheets. So in this case, we mix it and stir up for 10 minutes. That's fine. And then we do where we say how much water has been used, like so. It then says semi-dry, the obtained wet mass for 15 minutes, and we have to do it not exceeding 65 degrees. So I'm going to try, just for curiosity, and input another number. So I can't input, and the admin has forced me to reconsider using 70 degrees. If I then put it to something that complies with the regulations, such as 60, it is then said, and it's allowed me to input this field, so it's 60 degrees in an oven. Finally, I go through the rest of the procedure and see that I'm using the same oven as before, and then I just want to store it at a temperature not exceeding 27 degrees, so I'll put it as 25. Okay, great. So now I, as a user, am happy with this, and it's time to finish my shift. What do I do? So I can set a task, like so, and it's just a very generic task. But what I'm doing here is now making a new task and putting it as part of my process. So I'm going back onto my process page, and then we make a task here. I'm going to make a comment saying, coating step is next, please proceed. And then I can also start organizing the workflow by giving it to my colleague and saying it needs to be done by Friday at 12 AM. Now that I've done that, I can submit my task, and then an admin, or in this case me, can check the tasks list, see that the coating step is needed in the task workflow. I can then select on it, then assign it to a colleague, so in this case, like so. Now that I have assigned my experiments and assigned the task to my colleague, I'm ready to then sign off my lab book. So I'll just go sign and close because I'm being naughty and not getting any reviewers. You can see that straight away, though, the admin has said that it needs to check compliance and that actually part of the worksheet hasn't been filled. So it says that I need to do a timestamp. So if I go back to the experiment, you'll see that actually one of the timestamps was missing here. So when I click on it and now try and sign it, and I'll add a review in this case, you'll see that it fully complies with what the admin had wanted. I will then assign it to my colleague and then say, on the granulation step is incorrect, please use audit history. So now there is a clear chain of custody and there are reasons why things are happening, such as a asynchronous timestamp, and then people can check this when they're auditing the experiment. I then say I understand and that I comply with my internal regulations and then want to sign it. It now asks me to log in, so then I can comply with more regulation. So you can see that a running theme here is that we're always giving you opportunities not to slip up, and it's always gating you to stop you from making mistakes and allowing you to be GxP compliant. Now that I have sent it for review, it's time to go over the workflow. So within Signals Notebook, you can have a really, really basic workflow whereby this GxP user called Alex White could just send it to a colleague to be in review like I had just done. He could then either reopen the experiment if he's noticed, for example, some kind of typo or some kind of error. Alternatively, the colleague, such as Natalie Barnes, could then close that experiment. Alternatively, Natalie Barnes could say that you've done something wrong, reject the experiment, then I, as a user, could then reopen it. or you have the option which I first tried, which is to just directly close it and then you can directly reopen it. And these can all be enforced by the admin. There is an alternative option, which we didn't really go over, which is voided. And it's basically like trashing an experiment, just saying, for example, I made this experiment in the notebook, but I'm not actually going to start it. It's void. But a more enhanced workflow for a GxP environment, whereby you assign a first reviewer, it can then be reopened like previously. You also define a second reviewer, so in this case, Joseph Cook, and they can either be happy with the experiment or not and go through the same workflow as before. But importantly, it always goes back to this kind of like thermodynamic well of closed. Now that we've closed the experiment though, we could reopen it, right? So there's a third step which is important for GxP compliance, the archive state. So the archive state brings some more colleagues into the mix, whereby we have Mark Dean, who is an archivist, and he may prefer to check experiments and see when they're after 30 days, he looks at them and archives them manually. He may alternatively have use of the APIs and programmatically check if they are over 30 days old and then archive them if they're suitable for archiving. So once they're archived, if we wanted to make any changes with it though, we'd have to then ask another colleague, Maria Watson, to then unarchive this experiment and go through the workflow like previously shown. So the important thing about this is there's a clear chain of custody of each step within Signals Notebook, either inside an experiment or at the signing part. So at this stage, just to summarize, Signals Notebook in general has loads of functionalities which are really, really useful to improve your workflow as a scientist, regardless of what you're doing. But more particularly, we have things such as worksheets, which really help you as a GxP scientist comply with your regulations on a day-to-day basis. Thank you for listening. I will pass it over to Rochelle. I see that.
Hi. So let's see. I want to thank Philip and Chris for their presentations on using the Signals Notebook in a GxP regulated environment. And I think now we are ready for some questions. So let's see some of the questions here. Let's see. Okay. Will the worksheet allow for second person to review and sign individual steps, essentially additional column for a second reviewer or author?
I've not seen that personally. I don't know if Philip wants to put in. I've only ever used it to approve parts of a worksheet in particular, specifically by the admin defining something that doesn't allow it to come in, but also sharing an experiment with another user, and then they can then have an input field too.
Yeah, and I'll contribute to that a little bit. So what we didn't discuss, we've worked closely with a number of our customers working in this space as to needs, and that's really one that has not come up. The kind of the review portion, especially with signatures, it goes hand in hand with it's not just a signature, right? There's a statement that someone is making that their signature verifies. And there has not yet been a clear statement that someone would want to make, right? On our traditional signing workflows, you're making a statement like yes, this follows our internal business rules, or yes, as someone skilled in the art, I could repeat this work. And the statements are less clear. It's maybe yes, you can move forward or something like that. So we haven't done sort of intermediate signing. I think there are some organizations that maybe sort of use the existing signing, bounce off an experiment to be signed, and then bring it back. But that has not been a need that has come up yet in the community that we've been working with.
Okay. When do you expect that the power users will be able to create worksheets and group templates without involving an administrator?
I mean, they can right now. So they can, power users can create worksheet templates. They can create everything they need within worksheet templates. The one exception is right now if they need to create properties of using our attribute lists. So that is something we're looking at right now, but that's the one exception. They can do everything else that they need today.
Okay, assume a customer uses signals in both the non-regulated and regulated uses. Would Signal SaaS be the same cloud client for that cloud tenant for that client?
It's a great question. It absolutely depends. So we have customers working in multiple different modes. So we didn't really discuss the various offerings, but we do briefly introduce this. So Signals Notebook is a multi-tenant application. That means we put multiple customers, each have a tenant with separation of business rules and data, but sharing of the code per environment. Imagine a big pizza with individual slices. We sell that. Signals Notebook Standard is our rapid release. Signals Notebook E3 is our validation ready release. Some of our customers have a model we call private cloud, where they essentially get an exclusive pizza. Still the same architecture, still multi-tenant. We just don't provide tenants to other organizations on that particular environment. The one advantage of that is we can change the cadence. So we have some customers that split their organization, have different tenants. They may have a research tenant and a validated tenant on different environments, so they can have different release cadences. We have some customers that put everyone in one tenant. If they are all in the same tenant, they get the same release cadence. So you don't necessarily have to validate all of their workflows, but they get the same regularity or same frequency and of functional releases. So it really depends on you and your organization as to how you best deliver. Do you need do you have a community that strongly needs features to arrive faster and don't care about validation, don't want to be kind of held back on that freshness, or do you need to prioritize sort of data sharing and collaboration between those users? And cost tolerance also goes into that equation. So there's a few different ways of addressing that. We've seen them all. So there's certainly not consistency as we go from organization to organization, but there are multiple options that as you understand kind of what's important to you, what's most important to you, then there's different options that match to that.
Okay, you may have covered this already, but can you discuss the differences between the unvalidated and validated Signals tenant with regards to the features shown today?
So there is no difference. There is one application, Signals Notebook, and everyone gets it. There can be a difference depending on the product that you've bought as to how fast those features turn up. So we have a rapid release that we discussed earlier, and then we have this delayed release that gives you 2 to 6 months preview of the features coming, right? But the application, any given version on each of those sort of release cadences is the same. It's up to you as an organization which of those features are interesting to you or not, which ones you turn on for your users or a subset of users or not, and which parts of the application you validate or don't. But functionally, there's not two different sets of features that are delivered separately to our validated sort of release cadence and our non-validated. They get the same eventually.
How and where is GxP data archived from a technical perspective? Is the data archived directly within the Signals database, just logically separated? Is there any physical separation of the archive? Is the data moved when archived, or is it just a flag? Will there be a separate archiving module?
Yeah, great question. So it's still in the same infrastructure. It's a logical separation of that data. So the main requirement, business need that we needed to address was that, one, the content was visually separated as archived relative to other content, and that the author of that content was unable to make changes to that directly without going through someone else. So the author typically cannot remove that, return that content from the archive back to that closed state from where they can reopen it. So we're not taking that content and putting it on a hard drive and putting it in your basement. We're not putting it onto your on-prem database. It's still within the Signals Notebook database infrastructure. So it's as you say, a flag, a logical separation of that data.
And finally, I think this will be the last questions because we're kind of coming to the end. Is worksheets still beta functionality? And if so, when is it expected to be released for production use?
Right. So yes, it is beta functionality. We should describe though what beta means, because it's maybe a little different than you may be used to with some on-premise applications. So when we say that something is beta, the code is still there on our production systems. This is production level code. We may have a few, it may not be as clean as we want. We may have some features that we're missing, that we're not done with. And this is on our rapid release. This is kind of a benefit of releasing so frequently is we can sort of a given feature set we can bring out bit by bit. We don't have to wait till it's all done to release it to you. Specifically within our regulated customers though, we don't allow beta features to be enabled when you are on our deferred release cadence. So if you're on our Signals Notebook E3 or you're a private cloud customer on that cadence. The next cut for that will be the end of August. That will be going, so the first opportunity for our regulated customers to actually use worksheets in production will be the beginning of November when that goes out. So I do anticipate it not having that beta label by the end of August. So being fully available to our regulated customers at that point. Right now, it's very fresh capabilities, and our regulated customers are in the mode where they're in that 2 to 6 months preview. They're working out their validation plans. They're working out how they roll these out and implement it for their end users. So yes, I do anticipate that being off of beta in time for the cut for it to make it into full production for the next available opportunity for our deferred release customers. For those not taking advantage of this in a non-regulated space, it's a flag. You can choose to not deliver this to your end users because that flag exists, or you can choose to do that. We don't really mind. It's more an indication that we're not really done with what we think is a full MVP of functionality. But the feature works. It's production level. What we've delivered is production level capabilities.
Well, that's great. Thank you very much, Philip and Chris, for answering those questions. And thank our audience. Thank you for joining us today for our Signals Notebook Quarterly Connect series, focusing on the use of the Signals Notebook in the validated environment. We will have our next Signals Notebook scheduled, Signals Notebook Quarterly Connect, which is scheduled for August, and we hope you can all join us. Remember that you're already registered for the series, so there's no need to re-register for the next sessions. And in between sessions, you can stay up to date on our Signals Notebook new features and functionality via our What's New section of the new Revity website, which I just showed you, and email communications. And thank you for our speakers for sharing their insights and presentations, and for the great Q&A session. Any other questions, we'll be addressing pending questions in coming days, any other questions which we didn't get to. And thank you all for joining us today, and have a great rest of your day.